Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be looking at my custom Mezco Moonknight. I'm going to kind of take this review in a little bit of a different approach than I normally do. I normally start off with accessories. Today I'm going to start off with the gripes I had with the original Moonknight, and then I'll go into my dyeing process of the figure, and then we'll look at paint and kind of like extra details at the very end. So, one sec, I just realized I didn't bring my original cape over. All right, I got the original cape. Now we can dive in. So, starting off, some gripes with the figure in general, and just some things that I wish Mezco had changed a little bit. They're all minor. Let's just throw that out there right now. They're all minor. I think that overall, the original figure is pretty good as far as an interpretation of Moonknight. I think that I would have kept the head black because, like, the mask, the inside mask black, because that's how he looks in all the comics. I like that they, tried to do light blue eyes. I prefer silver, but I thought that paint app was good for the original version. And I think there are just tiny little things that they could have cleaned up design wise that would have made the figure a lot better. So starting off, just kind of go through it. I think that some of the rubberized padding is a little bit too thick. Kind of like looking at this leg here. I think that it just raises up too far off the fabric. Like, you can tell it's double layered because this has a significant raise compared to lower down on the figure. You can see that it inclines up, and that's because it looks like it's double layered with some of the gray. And you can see it there too, like you can see it on the leg there. It's significantly raised over, and you can kind of see it in the arms too. I just feel like the layering is too thick. And with that, we get some bunching under the arms. And I know we always get bunching, but I just think with the extra rubberized pieces that kind of run through, especially right in here, that run right under that crease, I think it makes it tighten up a little bit more than it would had we kind of ended the rubber armor. Because the only time you're really gonna see this like gray piece and some of this white is never, because you see it just kind of folds in. And so it would have made no difference if we shaved off, I don't know, 2 millimeters. I don't know. I don't sew, and I don't deal with rubberized parts, so I can give you the measurements. But had we cut off just a little bit, I think that would have been good. Likewise, I think that we probably could have left it as gray fabric at the joint here, because and same thing here. It doesn't look too bad at the back of the knees, but it seems weird that it just kind of bunches up and looks kind of gross. It doesn't fold naturally anymore. Like, you can tell that there's extra material in there. And I think it's funny that they decided to add detail on the back of the leg, but we don't get any sort of knee pad, no rubberized knee pad kind of stuff. At least we got some of that with like some of the Batman figures. So yeah, probably a little bit less rubber in there, because I think it probably just bunches up the elbow a little bit too much. We probably could have got a little bit more articulation out of it had we not had that rubber in there. Other thing, obviously, I love wired capes. As a customizer, as a figure fan, wired capes are everything. And so, we know that Mezco has added wired capes to figures, and or will be adding wired capes. I want to say the Magneto figure came with a wired cape, but I don't own it, so I can't say that for sure. But for some reason, I thought someone had said that. So I don't know why Moonknight couldn't have gotten one. It shipped so much later after the SDCC version that I don't see why they couldn't have added that, or at least given us an interchangeable one. Whatever, I'm not Mezco. Not going to argue with them. So yeah, those were just a few little things. Oh, last one. There is no side, like there's barely any side-to-side ankle pivot. And that is, like, I get a little bit more on the right foot, but that is even a little bit looser because I actually have popped the feet out already. and so the joints have kind of loosened up a little bit, but you can see with this one, it doesn't get as much as the right. So unfortunate. I don't know. Like, the design's cool. The armor design's cool. I would have been fine had they cut it off up here and just, given us a little bit more ankle, because I appreciate any and all articulation I can get, as long as it doesn't cost the aesthetic of the figure, which I don't think it would. Moonknight doesn't necessarily have to have this armor that comes over the ankle. There's nothing in his design that specifies that. So, whatever. Let me center him up again. There we go. So I said the next thing that will be, let me center my camera. There we go, that looks good. So the next thing I said I would be talking about is my dyeing process. When I posted this guy on Instagram, I had a couple people message me or put in the comments, like, please explain how you dyed it. So we're gonna get into it right now. So the first thing, since all his parts are white, I would very, very much emphasize the importance of removing everything. So I popped off the hood, popped off the head, and then I actually cut off the original cape. Not really cut off, but cut the stitching out. So got the original cape here. Here's the original Moonknight cape. And whoops, that's the inside. If we look at the outside, you can, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, you can see that there is stitching here, and you can see that the fabric, or that the string, is pulling out of the stitching, and that's because I removed all the second layer of stitching. And the reason why that is because the cape is actually stitched into the plastic ring. If you've seen any reviews about the original Moonknight or the SDCC version, you know that there's a plastic ring that helps secure this hood so that the hood doesn't fall off. And so there are just some sewn points on the sides and on the back, I believe, that just hold the cape in place so that it doesn't, spin around the figure and stuff. So cut those sewing points out, popped off the original cape, and then boiled some water up, popped off the gauntlets with the hands, and also popped off the boots. In the process, I also took the actual feet out too, so I could paint them. So all we're left with is just this, just neck, shoulders, torso, legs, and arms, obviously. But all the hard parts pretty much are removed. So being left with just that torso, the reason why I do that is because dyeing can have an effect on the plastic. It won't necessarily always, but it can. And so in the effort to keep all the pearly white parts pearly white, I pulled off everything. The only thing I was unable to remove is the Moonknight belt. And I will say the Moonknight belt did not suffer from the dyeing process. So there's a chance that the boots and gauntlets and hood won't. If you want to risk it, go for it. I personally just didn't want to take the chance, so I removed everything else. The reason why I couldn't remove the belt is because I didn't want to cut it. I didn't want to have to cut the plastic on the belt. Normally, most Mezco belts have some kind of tab that you can remove the belt on, like the Batmans do. I'm trying to think of other figures. Daredevil, Punisher does. All of them have removable belts. Steve Rogers, things like that. They all have a tab and you can just pop it out. There are some figures that don't, like the Red Arrow and Green Arrow figures. They don't. Theirs is glued in. And Moonknight's likewise is glued in. I don't know if I can get the camera to see it, if it'll focus on it. But you might be able to see that little black divot in there. And so there's actually a divot and it runs off to the right side. And that's where the belt has been glued in. And so this buckle part overlaps the underside of the right belt and is glued in place. And so I warmed up the water and I tried to see if the glue would come off and untab so I could remove the belt, but it didn't. So left the belt on. Belt turned out fine. It still matches everything else. It still has the shine. So it doesn't seem like anything got ruined. And I also did not remove the crescent because I knew I was going to paint it, so it didn't matter what color it turned out to be. That also did not dye. So, take it as you will. I just chose not to risk it. It doesn't seem like there's any effects on the plastic, but, do it at your own risk. I don't know what would happen. to these because I removed it. So into the actual dyeing process, we've pulled apart the figure, so it's kind of like been prepped. The dye I use is RIT dye. I chose to use charcoal gray. I've used this dye before, not specifically this one. I've used the black, and I used that on my Batman figure. I think those are the only two. Oh, my Batman and my Nightwing. Those are the only other two Mezco figures, cloth figures I've had to dye. So I used charcoal gray for this one. I was thinking about doing a pearl gray, but I realized that pearl gray, which is lighter, would probably match the gray parts of the suit too much. So I decided to go for something darker, and I think it adds some nice contrast while still preserving the white armor. And the reason I chose to dye was because the all-white suit meant that you weren't really able to appreciate all these details. And as much as I don't like the double paneling adds a lot of depth to it. Especially the one I like especially is these sides of the abs, because when you think about it, they're really just square pieces, but since they've been double layered, it adds a lot more character, and it also helps kind of slim and point everything to the center, making the body feel a lot tighter and more focused armor-wise. And so, all the armor just adds more movement and direction to the figure, if that makes sense. Most of it seems to make a lot of sense as far as his movement. You move the leg out and the armor comes together. So obviously you move it too far and it'll just all tuck up. But in general, the armor makes sense with the figure. You scoot that up and the armor plates meet. So I like all that detail that they added. I appreciate it. I think they could have made it make a little bit more sense with the articulation. But overall, I'm still relatively satisfied with it. So I wanted to bring those details out. And so that's why we chose to dye it. An important note is that these rubber parts do darken. If you want to keep the figure, you're still fully flashy white, bright white, do not dye it, because the rubberized parts will absorb some of the dye. So the way to counteract that is to use acetone. I put acetone on a Q-tip, and so dyeing process, I guess. Pour some into a pot, mix it with some water. I go about 50-50 on it. Their instructions say otherwise. I don't remember the proportions exactly as far as like the cup measurements. There are instructions on the side. I'm not going to read them for you. You buy it, you can read it. Here are the instructions. You can read it, figure it out yourself. But yeah, I go about 50-50. That's just up to me. I do follow their recommendations about putting some salt in there for cotton. I believe it's salt for cotton. And then also adding some liquid dish detergent. I don't know what that does necessarily, but I figure it probably will clean out any type of chemicals that are inside the fabric. Who knows? But I follow it, get it to boil, and I dip this guy in real quick. I only put him in for 10 seconds because I know that the rubber will absorb, so I didn't want to keep it in any longer. Their instructions say to keep something in for 30 minutes. That's really when you're dyeing clothes or you're, dyeing large portions, large quantities of something. In this case, it's a tiny figure. You're dealing with a 1/12 scale. So I dipped him in for 10 seconds. I got the dye into the figure. Obviously it's holding. We're not dealing with any fading, I'm not pulling any colorization off. So we're good there. Once I hold him in there for 10 seconds, pull him out. Immediately I put him under cold water, put him under a cold water bath. So I just run to the sink, turn it on, and wash him out. And that is to clear away any extra dye that might be sitting on the rubber itself, and also to clear away any excess so that when I'm handling the figure afterwards, I'm not getting dye on my fingers either. So it just washes out so that the colors that in there will stay and everything else will wash away nicely. So now that we've done that, I get my acetone, put it on a Q-tip, and all the white areas. So note, you probably want to know what areas are white and what areas are gray first. They're usually a little bit lighter, but I come with the acetone and lighten all the white parts again. And you should do this pretty quickly because otherwise I think the die will set permanently. Move that guy back. There we go. One thing to note, acetone is, I think it's an acid. Whatever it is, it will damage the rubberized material if you let it sit on there too long or if you do too many runs of acetone. So I would recommend one or two runs of acetone wiping at best. And what I do is I dip one side of a Q-tip in acetone and I leave the other dry. So I'll wash it out. So I'll go over it with acetone and then I'll dry the surface off so that there's not an acetone residue eating away at the rubber. So that's just to keep your figure safe. Cool. We're done with that. Figure's been dyed. Let the figure sit and let it dry because you don't want to be dealing with wet stuff. I don't think it matters at this point since you've washed out the excess dye, but after I did all that, I let the figure sit and let the body dry. That took an hour or two. Nothing too crazy. You probably could speed up the process with a hair dryer or something like that, but once again, I don't necessarily know the effects of that on the body, so at your own risk. Coming to everything else now. One thing I forgot to mention is I was very dissatisfied with the wash on the figure itself. There's kind of a black wash that goes on the figure, and you can actually still kind of see some of it in the hands and things like that. The issue is the black wash is spotty. Like you can see here, it kind of fades out on that center groove. And so because of that, when it's all on the hands and all on the legs and stuff, you can't appreciate as much the sculpt work because the wash isn't consistent. And so things fade in and out. And so instead of looking really clean and defining the lines and edges, it looks sloppy. Like here, there's a perfect example. You see, it just kind of cuts out and then the line starts again. So I didn't like any of that. I couldn't fix all of it. And I didn't want to spray everything like white because then I'd lose this nice pearl shine. So instead what I did was I said, I'll use chrome paint and pick out some of the things that I can. So I use Model Masters acrylic, not Model Masters, Model Color acrylic chrome. It comes in a little squeeze bottle. I think it's like 2 milliliters. I'm guessing. That's an estimate. I don't remember for sure, but it's a little bottle. I like those for hand painting. I know there's spray, but the nice thing about those Model Color compared to Model Masters is whatever the chemical mix is, it doesn't peel off the paint on second coats. So I can paint this once, let it dry, and go over it again with a second coat, and it won't like kind of peel or chip away the original. Model Masters has a tendency to do that. So I only use their paint for spraying, but if I'm hand painting, I like using Model Color because it's still thin, but you can do multiple coats without having any complications. So coming down to the paint, I hit it with the chrome, and so the crescent now has chrome, so you can see it, and I like it because it contrasts the armor more. I know that the armor is coming out a little bit blue here. I don't know why it is. I just think it's the lighting, because like when we move them back here, you can see the white and gray. So I don't know why when zoomed up it looks different. Shadows or something, who knows. But I hit the crescent with silver also, and I really like that because before it's white on white, and it was hard to tell that, they even added that detail. The daggers here, or the little knife crescent blade things, whatever you want to call them, I also did in the silver, and that's because before they were done in this pearl white, and so pearl white against it was like a super light silver, not necessarily pearl white, but super light silver against that pearl white means that you really can't tell where the edges are. So I didn't like that. And to then also help with the contrast further, I threw a glossy black through the belt, and that runs all the way back and around. It just adds some variation so that everything's not white. And I like the black on Moonknight. Obviously his SDCC suit, or PX, was it SDCC or was it PX exclusive? Either way, PX previews, whatever. Point being, Moonknight has black in his suit, and I think that just helps kind of define where the belt is and break up the figure a little bit. Otherwise, it all feels like it's just one white blob. So the head has been repainted. I did it in a matte black, and then I dry brushed it with a gray, and I did the same thing here. So I'm not going to pop the hood off because it's a pain, but instead we can see it here. Matte black, and then you can see all these gray highlights that sit at the top of the wrinkles there. That lighting is really good. You can see it. Focus. Yeah, you can, yeah, you can see it. You can see it right there. So we have a gray that runs over the creases and stuff like that, and that's just dry brushed in, and that helps bring out all the detail and texture that's on the head. And so that's been done the same for that Moonknight head. Coming down the figure now, we're going to look at the gauntlets. Everything on the original figure is just a pearl white. There is no outstanding detail. There's the wash, obviously, but I hit the crescents with my chrome silver. And here's a little painting tip maybe for some people. If you are working quickly, you can wipe the paint off the edges of an indent before it dries. So I would just swipe the chrome all through it, right? And that's how you get it all into that tiny edge. I don't have a crazy good brush, but then I can just run my finger over the surface of it and pull away all the excess that's on the top layer of armor so that the silver only sits on the inside. And so I did that for all the little crack, or not all the scratches. The scratches were fine, but I did it with all the crescent pieces so that it really brings out that detail. And that helps it become a lot more visible compared to when everything is just one straight color. Likewise, I hit chrome on the hands, and I hit chrome on all the hands. So you can see they all have that chrome silver, I don't know, handguard thing, whatever you want to call it. And then the knuckles too, I also did in that silver because it was all white before. And I was like, if everything is white, I can't tell where his suit stops and his armor starts. So got silver knuckles, and I did that on all the figures as well. Coming to the inside of the gauntlet, it is matte black, dry brushed with gray, like the head. Silver in the cracks to bring out all the crescents, and then also ran this line with the chrome as well. I'd keep on saying silver, chrome, chrome, silver, chrome. Same difference in this case. Obviously, the one thing I do like about chrome is that it's a lot smoother. Silver, it has all the sparkly bits in it. This is just a smooth, bright sheen. And I like the chrome on this guy compared to a silver because it's a lot cleaner. And I feel like it just sits with the very smooth, curved edge aesthetic of this Moonknight figure. Coming to the back of the legs, same deal, black with the dry brushed gray. There's a couple other things I want to hit on real quick. His hands that hold the silver blade claw things that are on his belt, I also picked out in the silver, and that just lets them stand out. Sorry, not silver, chrome. It just lets them stand out a lot better. So that helps, and obviously it's on the other hand with that other single blade. So last but not least, let's talk about switching in and out a wired cape. Obviously he has the wired cape on now. If you've been following this guy on my Instagram recently, sorry for those who are watching this video later, but I do have it on my story, and I do have it on my highlights, that originally I posted him with his normal cape, his loose cape, and then I switched out for a wired one. I got this wired one from GPS Lot. Sadly, I'm not sponsored, so I paid for it. Oh, I wish I was sponsored, but whatever. Got it from GPS Lot. Shout out to him, or he, she, whoever. They sell a lot of good customizing, like fabric materials, a lot of wired capes, a lot of wired jackets. That's where I get some of my stuff. Not all, but in particular, I like his Moonknight cape because of the fabric it's done in. It is done in a almost latexy, not latex because it's fabric obviously, but it has a very nice sheen to it. There's almost like this plasticky glow about it, which makes it sound scratchy, which is kind of odd. But at the same time, it feels like it has a lot of reflectiveness to it, and I really like that from Moonknight also. Just the whole idea of him being with the moon and all those kind of things. So if you buy it from GPS Lot, it is modeled on a, I don't know all the like ID numbers and stuff, but if you look up like Moonknight wired cape, this one should be the first one you get. I should note though that the original cape is not like this. Like it's just not a simple pop on type deal. So the original cape comes with a hood sewn to it, as well as like a clasp. And so you can see that this is part of the edge of the cape right here. And so this is sewn to another piece that's obviously layered under it. And there's also a fabric hood that's sewn onto the collar. So took an X-Acto knife, popped all the stitching out of the hood so I can keep the plastic one on, because I think this plastic one has a lot of nice detailing to it. So I wanted to keep it. I like how it has a very sharp, like crow's beak type point. Is that what it's called? Crow's beak? I don't remember, but anyways, it's got the very sharp point, Assassin's Creed-esque maybe. And then I cut off the binder stitching that sits at the neck, because otherwise the main collar on it, or the neck hole of the original, is on a wire too, and it's too small. It's too small to fit around that plastic ring. So I cut off all the excess, and then I molded it around the plastic ring, and then just kind of found where these folded over nicely, and I super glued it down. And you can see it hasn't super glued the suit in any way, so it hasn't messed up the suit. It's just super glued there so that it holds securely and it doesn't spin around or anything. And so then after that, it's just kind of tucking or moving your cape up to where you feel like it would fit nicely on the figure. And there you go. So that is my full review of my custom Mezco Moonknight. I've had some people ask me if I can make some for them as far as the dye and the paint, and I can. If you want it, shoot me a DM on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Tosh_customs. I do have a link on like the channel, the YouTube channel page, if for any reason you can't find me. So once again, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I always appreciate your feedback and your support. And once again, follow me at Tosh_customs on Instagram. I post a lot more regularly there. So if you want to see all my work in progress photos, if you want, if you kind of want to stay more updated on the things I'm doing, follow me there, because I don't make a review for every custom I make. So if you want to see every custom I make and know when things come on sale and things like that, Instagram is the place to follow me. So that's about it. So thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care.